This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Here we are. We made it. It's Friday. It's the 28th day of July. Thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. We have a good one today. This is a fascinating conversation and a fascinating new book by Oli London. It's a book called Gender Madness, One Man's Devastating Struggle with Woke Ideology and His Battle to Protect Children. That book comes out next month. This guy is a remarkable story in bullying as a youth. He was bullied. He felt attracted to men, boys, when he was younger. He had an abusive dad. He subsequently went through the whole gender transition thing, has had something like 32 cosmetic surgeries. He became addicted to it. Thought he was Korean for a time. Not kidding. It's a long, winding road, and it ends with him ultimately coming to the conclusion, through faith in Christ, that this was wrong. It was wrong for him and not in keeping with what he truly believed, but how he strayed from the faith. We talk a lot about that in this conversation today, and I hope it's a handbook for anybody who's battling this or thinking about this or has kids who are dealing with it. I think this book is going to be helpful. There were hearings on Capitol Hill on this very subject yesterday. We'll have some of that audio coming up. Democrats continue to sound straight out of hell when talking about it. No surprise. So that's on the way. Some reaction yesterday to my Trump interview. We'll talk a little about that in the show today. Also, Nancy Mace, the Republican from South Carolina, at the prayer breakfast yesterday, Tim Scott's prayer breakfast. Yikes. And what's going on with all the infirm, sickly, weak, elderly senators? Not just the husk we pretend is president, but United States senators. Another episode in as many days from another United States senator. We'll get into that. First, the guy that makes this show possible each and every day, a gentleman that wants to help you save money. I was just talking with my stepmother yesterday, and she said, we pay for a supplemental health insurance plan that is too expensive. And I said, why haven't you called John Ruhlman yet? usmedicalplan.com, so I'm going to get them connected. She says, I've been spending about $200 a month on this supplemental plan. Now, my dad has used their supplemental plan a lot. She says it's worth the expense. It saves us a bunch of money because, we need the policy. She said, but for me, I'm paying a lot and I haven't even had to use it. That's good. I mean, she's in good health, but I said, look, you don't have to necessarily spend a fortune. If you're a senior and buying a supplemental plan, call John Ruhlman. If you're a young person and you're healthy, you're spending out-of-pocket money on a health insurance premium, is it the best it can be? Does it pay you if you're ever hospitalized? There are a lot of private insurance plans that do. John knows 80 different private insurers. So if you buy insurance for your family, if you buy insurance for your small business and your employees, if you're older and you buy supplemental, if you're young and you buy your own, for Pete's sakes, call John. I'm talking about 30 to 60% savings on your health insurance premiums. Seriously. But you have to call him. Maybe your health insurance premium is great. It's the best he can do, best you can do, and he'll say, you're great. But what if he can get you better coverage at a cheaper rate? Odds are he's going to be able to, no matter where you live. 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321 or usmedicalplan.com. The pile-on continues, and of course, this news came, while there wasn't more indictment yesterday, the news came predictably as the show started, and I have to give credit to one of our harumphers who called it when the news broke on Hunter's plea deal blowing up. She got on our comment section at the Harump Society. She said, wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing more Trump dirt in the next 24 hours. And bing, bang, boom, lo and behold, here it is. On MSNBC and CNN this morning. Trump charged with retaining top secret Iran attack plan. Trump faces new charges in classified documents case. CNN and MSNBC have happily moved on. And now we're right back to Trump. Got an email yesterday from somebody who said, Stigall, you can like who you like, but I'm getting sick and tired of your subversiveness, your secret campaign for Trump. And I said, not a secret point. I've been pretty clear about it. He said, yesterday you sounded like you were blaming the other candidates for not appearing on the show. And I said, well, if that was the impression I gave you, I didn't mean to. What I was saying was, we have experienced over the years, I didn't necessarily mean at this stage in the political game, but we have experienced over the years, there are certain politicians and political people who are willing and eager and actively campaign to come on, and then there are people who avoid us despite our outreach. And I'm not saying right now at this in fact, I even went on to say that there are a lot of people in the Republican field who are concentrating right now on the early states, because if they don't win in the early states, then what point is a place, for instance, like Pennsylvania? They're not interested in thinking about states down the road. If they can't have a good, strong showing in Iowa or Nevada or South Carolina, there is no point. I mean, Fast Eddie, I've been telling you this since we started talking about trying to book presidential candidates. Nobody's going to sniff the part of the country we live, except people who are looking down the road. And you can take it however you want, but Trump is clearly looking beyond the early states. He believes he's got the early states sewn up. He's already thinking ahead to what he believes will be one of the grand prizes, and everybody knows it ultimately comes down to a place like Pennsylvania. That's why he's going to Erie tomorrow, right?
That's exactly right. Well, why are you doing a rally this early? Unless you're confident.
But somebody said, you're just, it's not some personal slight, Stigall. You got to get your ego out of the way that these other candidates aren't coming on. I said, if I gave you the impression that it's about me, I tried very hard to say, it has nothing to do with me. What I'm saying is, as we get closer to any kind of contentious intra-party campaign in particular, it's always interesting to me, the Republicans who make themselves available and want to talk versus those who don't. That's all. And I have been tracking that as a phenomenon since John McCain. Well, if you sound like you're pro-Trump out there. I said, listen, I have tried to be pretty honest with you. It is hard for me to deny that, if you're asking me, who am I going to vote for in a primary right now? If you're asking me, if I have to physically cast a vote, Chris Stigall personally, I'm probably going to vote for Donald Trump. I don't mind telling you that. I've tried to be very, very honest with you that I cannot see my way past what they're doing to the man at this hour. I can't see past it anymore. I'm not capable. And the more they pile on, the more inclined I am to just be supportive of the guy. That doesn't mean you don't have your own brain, and it doesn't mean I'm telling you that's who you should support and who you should vote for. I've also been very clear. I'm not going to be one of these ridiculous tantrum-throwing children who says if Trump is not the nominee, I'm not going to support the nominee. I think you'll note, I hope you'll find that this show has been fair, if not left alone, every other candidate except Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson. I don't think I've had much to say about the other Republicans. I've tried where I think I know and sniff a rat to even step in and defend them when I can. So I have by the time it gets to, a Pennsylvania primary, it'll be moot. That's not the point. It has nothing to do with my ego. Believe it or not. It has nothing to do with me. This guy mad at me. He wouldn't, of course, tell me who he supports. So I suspect he's probably a DeSantis guy. And then he starts to tell me why. I just cannot believe. I can't believe you support Trump after all we went through with COVID. This is a weird thing to me. I have to tell you that the COVID thing is the weirdest thing. The revisionist history about Trump and COVID drives me crazy. For the life of me, I don't get it. First of all, you got to understand, nobody's voting on COVID. I mean, they're not. I don't think there's any show, maybe in the country, who more thoroughly and better covered COVID than this one. And frankly, who lived it. As I said to this gentleman, my life, and I'm not whining. Many people suffered greatly through COVID, but I would put my life right up there and my family's life right up there as Exhibit A in those whose lives were completely turned upside down because of COVID. Now, thank God, there was no death. We didn't suffer that, but short of that, just about everything that we could do to change, inexorably alter our lives because of COVID, we did. And I don't hold Trump responsible for that. And I don't understand the weird revisionist history that we lived through that COVID abuse, and that was somehow Trump's doing. And they'll shout, Operation Warp Speed. And I say, you're mad because at a time when everybody's panicked about a virus sweeping the country, and and anybody who suggests they weren't alarmed about it initially is making it up. I mean, you're making it up. Everybody was bothered by it. Everybody was concerned. We had those stories. Cruise ships, old people dying. Seemed like it was spreading like wildfire. Now, it didn't take long. I think most honest, objective observers, it probably was a matter of weeks, not months. Weeks, not months, when Operation Warp Speed began, 15 days to slow the spread and all that. I think most of the country, because we didn't know much, was sort of in on the idea of, okay, you're telling us we got to kind of pump the brakes on a virus that's spreading quickly? That, okay, makes sense. I got my head around it. Like, it made sense to me. Didn't bother me. Problem was when that started to turn into weeks and months and years. And the people who became abusive showed themselves. And it was almost uniformly Democrats. There was never any forced shot from Trump. Trump never told me I had to take a shot. Trump never used the Labor Department to force me to take a shot as a condition of my job. Trump never said kids should have the shot. Trump never tried to stop anybody from doing business with us. Tom Wolfe did. Democrats did. We lost business. My business, my industry, my personal livelihood lost revenue because of the dictates of Democrats. So, I know this subject well, and I guess I found that one interesting yesterday. That was stuck in my craw a little bit. This guy wanted to argue with me that he couldn't believe that I was supportive of Trump because of COVID. And I look back at COVID, and I have a very, very different memory of, you can be critical of Trump for 1,000 things, and by all means, feel free. But I cannot accept, and I just find it wholly bizarre, that people hang COVID around Donald Trump's neck as though that's his doing, or, there was a better way to handle it. I mean, Joe Biden was elected ostensibly to handle COVID properly, and then proceeded to see more people die under his watch than Trump. Check the stats. That's true. A lot of people forget that too. Also, we saw Joe Biden take the reins and try to use the Labor Department to force the country to take a shot people didn't want as a condition of employment. Trump didn't do that. So I never found the sniping between Trump and DeSantis useful when it came to COVID. We're all on the same side here when it came to COVID. The shot thing, you don't like the shot, or you think the shot's dangerous or whatever? Okay, I agree with you. I didn't take it, and I don't want to take it. I think Trump sincerely believed he was leading an effort to thwart a virus. He's not an actual pharmaceutical scientist, though. He does have to defer to the people who are. You can say, bad judgment. Okay, I'll hear that. That's fine. You can say he should never have listened to Fauci. He shouldn't have trusted Fauci. I'm going to give grace there. You can say I'm wrong. You can say that's not leadership. I'm making excuses. That's all right. I put myself, look, we were designed as a country that civilians could hold the top job in the land. So I'm a civilian. I'm a nobody. You make me president of the United States and you say we've got a virus sweeping through the country. It seems to be indiscriminately killing people. What do? Then a couple of guys in lab coats who've been in the country's top medical positions for 40 years walk in the room and say, I think I know how to do this. Who do I listen to? What do I do? Well, lab coat guy who's been around since Reagan, and everybody said is beyond reproach. I guess I'm just going to go with my gut here, and we're going to wing it. I mean, what do you? It's a weird revisionist history 3 years later to look at COVID. Of all the things you could object to Trump about, that's the weirdest one, I must say. And DeSantis. I mean, I will say, to be completely fair across the board, I think Trump attacking DeSantis on COVID is absurd. It's absurd. And I may be misremembering, but I don't think there was really a single Republican, to my memory, Maybe a Larry Hogan, barely Republican type in Maryland. But I can't remember many Republicans with whom I objected or disagreed during COVID in terms of mandates, edicts, shots, masking. Unless my memory's faulty. That's anybody from Trump on down. You?
I'm trying to think. I can't remember Asa Hutchinson. No, I don't think on overall the Republican governors performed well.
So there's this weird thing that the shot has popped up, and a lot of people believe, I can't say conclusively, although I'm pretty suspicious, that the shot is killing people. Is that Trump's fault? If in fact that's true. That's another weird thing. You believe the shot is killing people. All right, so you believe what? Trump had a shot engineered to purposely kill people, and he knows it kills people, and he's doing it with glee? It's a weird thing. Or Trump should have known and immediately demanded no one take the shot. Trump's whole thing has always been about choice. He's advocated for it. He says he's taken it himself. His wife took it. The whole administration took it. He felt he was leading an effort to combat a virus. And I don't know. Anyway, you set all that aside. The guy is now being hit right and left with an indictment about every other day by a political movement that wants to take him down. To what benefit? To what end? That's all I thought about all day yesterday after talking to him. Some people said, Stigall, he sounded tired. I go, well, I suspect he probably just woke up. We may have been one of his first interviews of the day, but yeah, he's tired. You'd be tired too. Of course he's tired. It's remarkable he's not weeping in the corner. I don't know who wouldn't be. I don't know why he did. That's why I asked him yesterday, why do you do this? Why do you run? Why do you want this? And I'm going to have to take him at his word. What's the upside? Sincerely, folks, what is his upside? What do you think he's got to gain here? Lucrative deals on the other side of it? With who? Who wants to do business with him? I don't know. I find myself feeling more empathy for Donald Trump with every passing day. And I've tried very hard. So this guy, he wasn't impolite. He just suggested, I'm trying to keep it some secret and be stealthy of my support for Trump. And so I guess I felt I just needed to say, if I'm leaving you with the impression that I'm being too cute by half and not telling you that if you're asking me personally right now who I would support if I had to cast a vote in the primary, which won't be an issue for me, because by the time I get to actually cast a vote in the primary will have been decided. So I've shared with you 1,000 times, I am not in the business of telling you who you support in this primary. And if Trump is not the nominee, I am I'll vote for Asa Hutchinson. I'll vote for Chris Christie over Joe Biden. You hear me? So let there be no mistake about my sentiments. Let there be no confusion about how I feel. I love Ron DeSantis. I think he's fantastic. And if Ron DeSantis manages to figure out how to overcome this thing, this behemoth of news and this confluence of constant indictments and all this stuff that's kept keeping Trump on the news at all times, if DeSantis figures out a way to cut through and become victorious, I will full-throatedly, happily stand behind him. But I don't know, this weird. I need to express to both pro-Trump people and pro-DeSantis people, I'm not going to engage in revisionist history to trash the other guy. I'm not doing it. You can do that if you want. I think it's wholly dishonest and a complete waste of time. Let's stay focused on the most abusive administration we've ever lived through in our lives. Let's stay focused on defeating them and stop with this crap, this weird revisionist history attack stuff on DeSantis and Trump. I don't like it. I don't play. It's not interesting to me. I'm not doing it. I hope I've been transparent enough here, Fast Eddie.
No, I think so, Chris. And I was even thinking about this more yesterday as well. If the polling data is correct, then it shows at the moment that Donald Trump has an insurmountable lead over the rest of the field. So what is one of the states that he needs if that is true?
If he's the nominee.
Believes that,
yeah.
Yes. Pennsylvania is of utmost importance right now.
Yeah. And so he's on his way to Erie tomorrow to lay that groundwork. He's looking on. And for those of you that don't like Trump and don't want him to be the nominee, I know that makes you mad. You're irked. I've been dealing with this from the jump. People in this audience who don't want Trump, they're mad about Trump, they don't like the lead Trump has, they're sick and tired of talking about him, they don't want him to be the nominee. I have personal friends that feel this way. And I think what they want me to do is come on and just start blasting away every day. We cannot make Donald Trump the nominee! Whatever you do, stop, people! Wake up from your trances! All is lost if Trump's the nominee! And because I won't do that, I guess it rubs some people the wrong way. I don't care who the nominee is. I know who I support, but I don't care who he or she is. Once we get that Republican, I will vote for him or her and actively support him or her to defeat the most corrupt, destructive administration I have ever lived under. That's all I have to say to you about it. What I'm sad to say is it seems there are a lot of people in this audience who have their candidate and are going to pack their ball up and go home if their candidate doesn't win the nomination. And I would just say respectfully, you're nobody I'm interested in hanging out with or talking to or frankly, even engaging in a discussion about the way forward with this country. If you're that short-sighted, if you're so small-minded, if you're so petty and petulant and personal that you don't understand the destruction we're living under and you would rather it continue than support someone you don't support at present in the primary, you're no kind of American that I want to do business with. You're no better than a common Democrat. You want to perpetuate the destruction. I don't. I sat down for a conversation with Jason Perrett. He is the founder and financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning. Jason came in studio and we talked. The video's at chrisstigall.com. You can watch the entire conversation right now. I wanted to let you hear a little of the conversation because Jason has a passion for providing financial services to clients who are looking to pursue financial independence wherever they may stand. And that was one of the things that I asked him. Jason, do you have a requirement? I mean, is there like a set number? Well, I guess I don't have enough money, or Jason probably only wants to talk to people if they got $1 million in the bank. What is the right number for somebody to reach out and call you? Here's what he told me.
Well, honestly, there's really no such thing in my eyes, because what's important to you and what's important to me and what's important to listener A, B, or C, they're completely different. I've had clients that are in retirement, living on Social Security, and they walk in handing me $1,000 check from their Social Security check because they live such a lifestyle that is, they're perfectly content. Everything's paid off. They have what they want. And then on the other side, I have people who have lots of money who want to take more than what a portfolio can potentially handle. And so you got to work that, there's education and coaching, there, but there is no set number. They have these rules out there about, if you're 30, you should have X, or 40, you should have X. But I haven't found that to be true.
So let Jason Perrett at Eagle Wealth Planning set goals and help you meet those financial goals. 816-394-8117. Give him a call. It doesn't matter where you live in the country. Watch that whole video at chrisstigall.com. I think you're going to enjoy him. You're going to learn a lot about his perspective. It doesn't matter where you live. If you're not happy with where your money is sitting, or you need to start thinking about it and you don't know where to start, Jason's a great place to start. 816-394-8117. You can email Jason at eaglewealthplanning.com. And again, my whole conversation's at chrisstigall.com. Securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a broker-dealer and a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. I was watching a little of his interview with Megyn Kelly a couple of days ago and was fascinated by it. I was fascinated by his story, and I will say, as a Christian, my favorite part of his story is actually where it just, I guess where you might say one part of it ends, but the exciting part of his life begins. Oli London is author of a forthcoming book called Gender Madness, One Man's Devastating Struggle with Woke Ideology and His Battle to Protect Children. It's out August 15th. Oli London is the gentleman's name. Oli London TV on Twitter, London Oli on Instagram. Oli, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to join you, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
May I start where maybe your story, as I say, I don't want to say ends because it's actually just getting started in many ways. It's exciting. May I start with your personal profession of faith? I'm so deeply intrigued. Before we get into the background, let's start with where you are today.
So it was 8 months ago that I actually rediscovered faith. And as a child, I went to a Church of England school. So, we would go to church every week. And I always had such lovely, fond, positive memories. We used to do Easter egg races, Kris Kringle, and the Christmas was always special, the Christmas service. So I had such fond memories. So when I was trying to rediscover myself and trying to get back to the old me, that was an important step because it was helping me rekindle these memories of my childhood going to church. And, it was also my saving grace because I needed that solace. I needed that peace of mind because I was struggling so much. So I went into a church in London one day for that peace of mind, and I started to reflect on myself. I started to go to regular services, speak with the congregation, speak with the priest, and everybody was so lovely and kind and welcoming and so non-judgmental. And I really felt at home for the first time.
Oli, where did that go? Because this is something, as a Christian, as a believer, in the secular world, raising kids myself, who I think are great kids, like every kid, they struggle with certain things. For you, where did that go? You said you were raised in the Church of England. You obviously went away. You fell into some pretty dark stuff, which we're going to get to, and you came back. Why did you leave in the interim, do you think, or turn away?
Well, when I was a teenager, as many young people do, they kind of lose faith these days. And it's a very sad thing. I think faith is a great thing to have in our lives to keep us balanced, to give us perspective, to always make us think about others and improving the world. And I really lost that in my teenage years. And, I was having a tough time as a teenager going through puberty. I was struggling with my identity. And then I used to get bullied a lot. So I kind of lost touch with the church and lost touch with religion and God and Jesus. And I didn't think about it. And the sad thing is a lot of kids are like that these days. We have social media. We get so addicted to that, we kind of lose sense of reality and we lose that connection to God. So I completely lost it, which was sad. And I actually became pretty much an atheist. I wasn't going to church anymore. I wasn't praying. I kind of gave up hope. I thought, I have no hope in my life. I'm so unhappy with the way I look and my identity. And it was only really last year that I was able to finally get back to God, and that saved my life.
And if I may, you're very open. I don't know your relationship with your family, your parents. Did you have what was your family life, your home life? Because what I would like and hope is that there are parents that might be listening to this too, that if they have concerns about losing their child or slipping away into what you fell into, is there something parents can learn from your story or do better?
Yeah, so I had a very tough relationship with my father. He was always very emotionally manipulative and abusive with me. So I really tried to erase all similarities with him. So I actually wanted to become more feminine, more like a girl, like my mother, because I was closer to her. And, I think having a strong family unit is so important these days. And, being able to have a conversation with your parents. And I think, it's a difficult thing because I have, so many parents across the U.S. messaging me every day asking for advice because they're really struggling with all of this gender identity and their kids, are being pressured in school to transition. It's such a tough subject. I think this is a conversation that parents should be having with kids. I know some kids don't like to talk about it, but it's the only way because this isn't a conversation that, school counselors or teachers should be having with kids, because they're going to, trying to indoctrinate the child and transition them and stuff. So I think parents need to be more aware of what's going on at school, what their child is doing on social media and having that conversation because, they might see the warning signs that their child is changing their behavior. And I just think, have that conversation early on before it gets to an extreme. And, love your child unconditionally, but try to explain to them that for many of these cases, many of these kids actually grow out of it in adulthood. 85% of people grow out of it. So it's an important conversation to have early on when they start to see these signs of their child suddenly changing.
Oli London's book coming out on August 15th is called Gender Madness, One Man's Devastating Struggle with Woke Ideology, His Battle to Protect Children. A gentleman who is a chapter leader of something called Gays Against Groomers. I did an interview with him a few weeks ago on my show, and his theory, he's a gay man, And his theory is that many, he won't say everyone, he didn't blanket say everyone, but he believes that many people that fall into this transition trap are just struggling with sexuality and are convinced that maybe they're just not the right gender. How valid do you think that is as a criticism?
Well, I think that's a very strong argument, and I also agree with that perspective because, look, we have so many kids these days, and as a kid, it's a confusing time. You're 13, 14 years old, you're at school, you're discovering yourself, and some of these kids, they might be gay, they might be lesbian or bisexual, but they're now being told that they are actually trans, and that's what's happening. So, to all the trans activists that try to say people like me are homophobic, they're actually the homophobic ones because they're almost doing this conversion therapy on these kids that are heterosexual, gay, lesbian, whatever their identity, they are telling them that they're trans. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing thousands and thousands of kids that may otherwise just be struggling to learn about their sexuality. They are being told, we need to get you on hormones and puberty blockers. This is the reason for your confusion. And they're being put into the medical system. And it really is a tragedy.
You went through something like 32 procedures, I read, cosmetic procedures. I don't know your age, but my first question is, was that not costly? What was that whole process and expense?
It really was. I mean, it was over a 10-year period, and it was having several surgeries a year. And again, I had 32 surgeries, went under the knife around 9 times in total under anesthetic. I put myself at risk, and it was a lot of money. And, the more surgery you have, the more expensive it gets, because every time I would do a nose surgery, I would damage it and it would get more fragile. So most doctors wouldn't perform on it. So I had to fly to 5 different countries to have these procedures. And, I do regret what I've done in the past, but also, in the eyes of God, I think I've done all of this to learn a lesson so I can help other people.
Amen.
So, I don't look back and think, I wish I could turn back time and stop all this. I think this has taught me a valuable lesson. I have this insight into this world of identity struggles that I can use to help kids and parents and all sorts of people.
Are you, if I may, as I also read it and understand it, like we were just talking, as you were coming up, you were bullied, you were confused about your sexuality. May I just ask today, where do you see yourself, your personal life, your relationships, your attractions, just to be clear and reset today?
So when I was a teenager, I really struggled with my sexuality and I was very confused. So I was actually, interested in guys and I was struggling with being gay. But at the time I thought, maybe I'm born in the wrong body. Maybe the reason I'm attracted to guys is because I'm meant to be a girl. So that really spearheaded the gender dysphoria that I experienced throughout much of my life. But, I've dated guys before, I've also dated girls. But now I'm at a place where I actually want to start a family in a few years. When I'm ready, I'm still on this process, on this road to get back to being me and trying to become a better person. But I would like to start a family with a woman in the future. And, I think it's important to provide family values these days because, we see, China, for instance, they use TikTok and stuff to destroy family values. And this gender ideology is also destroying the family unit. So I think it's important. And I would love to have kids one day, but I'm not quite ready now, but, in a few years.
It's a remarkable thing because I will say that in my church, this is something that our pastor talks a great deal about, this issue, and it's never in a condescending, judgmental, angry, hateful way, but he's not shying away from it. How important is it that people's churches, their houses of worship, stand up and hammer on this, in your view, right now? I mean, and again, in a kind way, but how important is it that they address it?
Well, look, I think the Christian community is incredibly inclusive and kind, and they do not judge people because, no matter who you are, we're all sinners. Nobody's perfect. We're all made in God's image. We all make mistakes. But I think the important thing is to talk about this subject because at the end of the day, it's kids that are being affected most, and we cannot allow these kids to be medically transitioned. So it's a sensitive subject. People always like to say, oh, if you speak about this, you're transphobic, you're bigoted, you're homophobic. But we have to have this conversation now. It's not, how it was 10 years ago. People were just simply living their lives and existing. Now it is a direct attack on children. And, you have schools pushing gender ideology, drag story hours, and it's just harmful. And kids shouldn't be exposed to that. Adults can make their own decisions, but kids cannot do that. So I think for all churches, all churches are inclusive of people, but I think we need to have this conversation and, do it from a place of sensitivity, that we care about helping people, we care about making the world a better place and protecting kids and women and parents and respecting all people.
Oli, my biggest worry, I think what makes me even more ill than the idea of this being politically leveraged or even public schools getting next to their kids and, having these secret conversations about transitioning. What scares me is it sounds like it's a multi-billion-dollar industry now. I'm starting to read of children's hospitals, fully willing to do this with minors. I mean, we're talking about kids under 10 having these conversations. There's obviously a lot of, given what you just said, there's a lot of money to be made. Is money driving this transition talk, do you believe?
Absolutely. I mean, I have detailed information about this in my book, Gender Madness, which is on pre-order on Amazon now. And basically, last year alone, Big Pharma made around $2.1 billion from medical transitions on teens. And that is projected to rise to over $5.5 billion by 2030. So we're seeing a staggering increase. And if we compare this, 15 years ago, there wasn't any gender surgery clinics for kids in the US. There's now over 60 pediatric clinics. So we're seeing they're creating the problem to create a demand for their services. And, if you're on hormones, you're on hormones for life. So these kids are sadly becoming big pharma customers for life. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. If we look at the people behind this, when you have, for instance, Democrat lawmakers passing laws to allow gender-affirming care for minors, a lot of these Democrats, they're, lobbyists and people donating to them are these big clinics and hospitals, and they really try to suppress legislation. They try to say that it is abuse or you will be responsible for child suicide if you object to this. So they really use these fear-mongering tactics, which is wrong because at the end of the day, they're making money from this. So we really need to stand up and call that out.
So when Republican governors like former Governor Asa Hutchinson say things like, hey, listen, I don't want to get in between. I'm a conservative. And while I disagree with it, I don't want to get in between a parent and their child and their decisions for their child's health care. Do you believe that, or do you believe legislators have a role in getting involved in outlawing this stuff on minor children?
Well, in the last year, around 20 Republican states have passed legislation to ban gender-affirming care, and you do have federal courts trying to challenge that in certain states. Tennessee had a challenge, but that's now been unblocked, so they've continued to ban. But I think it's important. I mean, I get what people say when they say, oh, it's all about the parent's decision and we need to protect parental rights. But at the end of the day, children cannot consent to these. So even the parents, in many cases, the parents aren't fully aware of the long-term health effects of these hormones, puberty blockers and surgeries. They are being misled by doctors. Doctors tend to use the scare tactic with parents by saying, if you do not transition your child, you're going to have them commit suicide. And that's the scare tactic we've seen detransitioners Chloe Cole and Layla Jane, who are suing Kaiser Permanente in California. They have said that their parents were coerced into signing off with these things. So, I don't always blame the parents, but I think at the end of the day, kids can't get tattoos, they can't smoke. We shouldn't be allowing them to have these surgeries.
Oli, I just can't thank you enough for your testimony for Christ. And if ever, I think the most important thing about your story, quite frankly, is the healing power of Christ and how Christ has moved in your life and brought you back to a place where you want to have a family and you want to tell this story. If ever anybody doubts the healing power, you're the demonstration of it. I mean, he helped me kick booze, but that's that's a hill compared to the mountain you climbed.
Absolutely. I mean, Christ is our savior and, Christ can bring us out of all of these situations. So the more faith we can have in society, and raise children in a good way with Christ, with God, that is the way to save us from all of this gender madness. So that's why these things are very important. And, it's all discussed in my book.
Gender Madness, one man's devastating struggle with woke ideology and his battle to protect children. It's out August 15th, available for pre-order right now. Oli, I'm grateful, so grateful to you, sir. I hope you'll come back. Thank you. Harriet Hageman, this is the woman that took over for Liz Cheney in that Wyoming seat. I really like her a lot. Take a listen.
In fact, and especially when it comes to children, it seems to me that gender-affirming care is better described as sexual lobotomy. It is treatment that is fundamentally and permanently alters the sexuality and medical and psychological well-being of these patients. It causes irreversible sterilization and serious long-term medical complications and long-term reliance on pharmaceuticals. These treatments and surgeries are controversial medical practices that seek to change a person in a manner which is not actually achievable, and they will not withstand the test of time.
Wesley Hunt, friend of this show, Congressman, Texas.
This is the food pyramid according to my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old daughters. And by the way, in the Hunt house, we don't do Ben and Jerry's. It's Bluebell only. If my children had their way, they would have ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and for every single meal in between. Oh, the wisdom of children. But in a sane country, we know that children are mature enough to make adult decisions that will impact the rest of their lives. That's why we have parents. Children cry for ice cream, but as parents, we have the wisdom to know that ice cream is not in their best interest, particularly their long-term interest. I want to thank my parents, Willie and Diane Hunt. They had 3 children. All 3 of us went to West Point. All 3 of us served our country. All 3 of us earned multiple master's degrees from Ivy League schools. Do you know why? Because my parents did not give in to the thoughts of an adolescent Wesley Hunt. I am a United States congressman because my parents didn't listen to me when I was 8 years old. They raised us. They cared for us. They taught us the ways of being successful people.
Good for him. We don't have time to play a ton of it, but Fascinated, you have a particular bit of testimony yesterday, some of those that have been through this gender transition stuff on Capitol. There was a lot of powerful testimony. Anything in particular that's your favorite? We'll give it a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I actually would want to go to Paula Scanlon just because Chloe Coles is great, but it's very long.
Okay, let's do some of that. Paula Scanlon. And this Paula Scanlon, in particular, she is someone who, give us her backstory again, because I don't know that I remember.
Yes, so she actually was on the team with Leah Thomas. When Leah Thomas was introduced to the team, she was actually, I'm trying to think, maybe a month or so ago, was on this show. So she's kind of become...
Oh, this is the Paula Scanlon we interviewed.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay. Then I did remember. I thought the name sounded familiar. Okay, she was on Leah Thomas's team. The male that we're pretending was a female swimmer and beat Riley Gaines in the pool. All right, so here's some of her testimony yesterday.
I'm Paula Scanlon, a spokeswoman and advisor for the Independent Women's Forum, and a former NCAA athlete. I am here today to share my personal story. I started swimming at a very young age, and by age 8, I was swimming competitively, and by late middle school, I was devoting at least 20 hours per week to swimming. I gave up countless Christmas holidays, weekends, and social events to work towards my goal of swimming Division I. A dream that came true when I began swimming for the University of Pennsylvania. While I am not an NCAA champion, I hold the New England Independent School League record in the 400-yard freestyle relay, a record that has stood since March of 2017. In September of 2021, Leah Thomas began participating as a member of the Penn women's team. Leah, formerly Will, had personal best times in every freestyle event that were faster than the women's world records. Once the season began, Thomas was leading the country in multiple events while only placing in the top 500 in those events on the men's team. Thomas later became an NCAA champion in the 500-yard freestyle, the first NCAA champion in our women's team history program. While many of you already know this, what you do not know is the experiences of the women on the University of Pennsylvania swim team. My teammates and I were forced to undress in the presence of Leah, a 6'4" tall biological male, fully intact with male genitalia, 18 times per week. Some girls opted to change in bathroom stalls, and others used the family bathroom to avoid this. When we tried to voice our concerns to the athletic department, we were told that Leah's swimming and being in our locker room was a non-negotiable, and we were offered psychological services to attempt to re-educate us to become comfortable with the idea of undressing in front of a male. To sum up the university's response, we, the women, were the problem, not the victims. We were expected to conform, to move over, and shut up. Our feelings didn't matter. The university was gaslighting and fear-mongering women to validate the feelings and identity of a male.
Yeah, so we're not only beating the hell out of women, see, this is, again, isn't this interesting? On the same week that we're being told that this great female empowerment movie Barbie is out, literally the same week, Barbie, yay, Barbie, women, go women. Democrats are telling women that men make the best women. Steve Cohen, this Weasley little SOB, who deserves his own coveted space in hell, from Tennessee. Listen to this.
Transgender people have been around for a long time, and they have rights, and they need to be respected. I read Ms. Scanlon's testimony. I wasn't here to hear it, and I think Penn didn't deal with your situation like they could have and should have in putting up some type of different barriers in the women's area of the locker room. But that's another issue. But things should be dealt with in a different way.
Sure. This
is an easy way for people to try to get points. Pick on a minority group that is the most minority and least understood in our country.
I'm sorry. Women standing up for themselves and not wanting to be exposed to naked men in their showering and changing facilities is picking on minority groups, is it? So you hear this? You hear this man, this voice from hell? This man says protecting our nation's women is picking on minority groups. Sheila Jackson Lee. What a peach, this one. Get ready. Remember, voices from hell. These people come straight out of the pit of hell. Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman, Texas.
I will not pretend to be a scriptured person. I am not ordained. I'm not in any leading religious organization.
Shocker.
As a religious leader.
Yeah, I doubt you go to church.
But I have spoken
sweetie.
To persons who lead.
Spoken to persons.
And they've given me no evidence that this issue speaks to anyone's religion. Again, I don't pretend to know every aspect of everyone's faith.
Yeah. Anybody who talks about religion and says religion is nobody you listen to when talking about religion, because that's not. What you know what that is? Can I translate? I've never set foot in a church. I give no thought about a creator. I have a total arrogance and total lack of self-awareness. I think of nothing but myself and my power and my Democrat Party. I don't defer to a creator. I don't think about a maker. I don't think about heaven and hell. I have no faith of my own. That's how you translate that woman. That's what I say. This is straight out of hell. I have talked to many religious leaders. I myself am not a religious leader, but I have spoken to many people who are religious leaders, and I have been assured by all the many religious leaders to whom I have spoken that there is no affront, there is no problem, there is nothing wrong with transgender ideology as it applies to anyone's religion. Why don't you come to my church, lady? I'll show you scripture that says it's an affront to God. You know, I know you don't believe in God, but I'll show you my faith. I'll show you exactly in the book. The Word of God is pretty clear about it, lady. I have spoken to many leaders. Have you spoken to God about it, Sheila Jackson Lee? Have you read God's Word about it? I'm not interested in the religious leaders to whom you have spoken. I love it. That's how you know that woman has absolutely no idea what she's talking about. She goes to religious leaders for guidance on spiritual things, like you'd go to the dentist if you have a cavity. Pit of hell. Pit of hell. Just so you're clear, unlike maybe any issue we've seen in modern history, and they're really sort of cousins, those of you who are Sound of Freedom enthusiasts who've been passionate about that subject, child sex trafficking, may I tell you that the most closely related cousin to that story is this transgender movement, this multi-billion-dollar movement where we're taking minor children, sexualizing them, doing gender mutilation, pumping them full of hormones. It's madness. It's madness, and it's equally as abusive. And look, if I had my way, I'd jail every parent who even entertained it. I have absolutely no compunction whatsoever about saying if you are the parent of a minor child and you allow him. Look, it wasn't too long ago that we were having a discussion about if you sent your child to a camp, a Christian camp, to discuss their sexuality, you were sending them to some sort of mental torture facility. In fact, if memory serves, states outlawed that. I think New Jersey outlawed it. You couldn't so much as speak to your child with religious institutions like camps or faith-based groups and say, let's talk about your sexuality. Let's have a discussion about that. No, that was considered some form of abuse. But now, in 2023, parents can take their 8-year-old to a children's hospital and start pumping them full of chemical castration drugs and surgeries to remove their genitals. And that's not abusive. I have spoken to many religious leaders, and I have been assured that no one of any religion says there is any problem. It is not contrary in any way to anyone's religion, says the woman who knows nothing about anyone of faith. Alarming evidence links China's Communist Party to American K-12 schools. An anti-indoctrination group claims. Does this surprise you? Parents Defending Education, a grassroots organization dedicated to fighting indoctrination in the classroom, says they have uncovered disturbing evidence linking Chinese Communist Party-sponsored financial entities to American K-12 schools. The findings are a detailed analysis in a new report dubbed Little Red Classrooms, which was sent to 34 governors, key lawmakers, and committee chairs on Wednesday. The alarming evidence uncovered by our investigation should concern parents, educators, and policymakers alike. Families deserve to know who is influencing the American education system so they can make an informed choice about what their children are learning behind closed doors. The president of Parents Defending Education, Nicole Neely, said the Trump administration took steps to rein in Confucius institutes at colleges and universities. It is frightening, however, that no such transparency mandate exists at the K-12 level. Accordingly, it is imperative that elected officials at both the federal and state levels take immediate action to gauge the extent of these programs in order to ensure that American school children receive a high-quality education free from undue foreign influence. Do you doubt it? I do not. You know, your state's Department of Secondary, what do they call that? Elementary and secondary education. They set the curriculum. And if you doubt for a minute that Confucius Institute stuff that's been uncovered in universities doesn't make its way to these state education departments, you're kidding yourself. Bud Light brewer lays off hundreds of U.S. workers. This from the Wall Street Journal. The world's largest brewer also brews Stella Artois and Budweiser. Said this week that the cuts would affect less than 2% of their roughly 18,000 workforce, but the layoffs not impacting frontline workers like brewery and warehouse staff. While we never take these decisions lightly, we want to ensure that our organization continues to be set for future long-term success, said the Anheuser-Busch chief exec, Brendan Wentworth. These corporate structure changes will enable our teams to focus on what we do best, brewing great beer for everyone. The restructuring eliminated corporate and marketing roles at major U.S. offices in St. Louis, New York, and L.A. Well, that would be where I'd cut first. If I were running Budweiser, I'd say we'd have to have a severe enema in the marketing department, and that apparently is where it came from. They attribute, the Wall Street Journal is basically suggesting it's Bud Light sales that led to it. Who knows? Is it an economic downturn? Is it that as a combo? Hard to say for sure. Continuing with the elderly and infirm governing us. You know, Mitch McConnell had the, I don't know what you want to call that yesterday. What was that? What do you even call it? Some said seizure, but there was no seizing in the classic sense of convulsions. He just literally locked up. He was talking and then all of a sudden just started staring, closed his mouth and just stared, not blinking. And his colleagues around him went up and went, uh-oh. I mean, you could just tell. You could tell they'd seen it before. They were like, Mitch is shorting. A couple of them nodded at one another, and then another one jumped in to start speaking for him. Similarly, Dianne Feinstein, who's 9,000 years old and has had a massive stroke, sitting in her wheelchair. Sitting in a hearing yesterday, and Patty Murray, one of her colleagues, is whispering in her ear, just say yes, just vote for it, just say aye. Listen to this.
Senator Feinstein, Say aye. Pardon me? Aye. Yeah. I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense. And it funds priorities submitted. Yeah, just say aye. Okay, just aye.
Thank you.
This is the best the nation has. John Fetterman. You want to play a little of the... So that's California's senator. You want to play a little of Pennsylvania's senator while we're at it? Kentucky's senator is freezing, unblinking, having some sort of mini-stroke checkout. So that's Kentucky's senator, California's senator. How about Pennsylvania's senator while we're rolling?
Earlier today, some comments about the tragic accident on 995, and if you want to make any comments with respect to that, feel free. You're recognized.
No, I would just really like to, the 95. Obviously that you're pretty much preoccupied with 95, and I certainly am too. And we know it's a major aidery, not just for Pennsylvania, but for the East Coast. And a lot of Pennsylvanians are worried that the delays in repairs bring to its standstill deal.
3 United States senators literally can't communicate. 3 United States senators, and by the way, a guy we're pretending is president, is not far behind them when he's not falling. This is the best we've got? What's going on here? I tell you, I'm not one for this kind of talk, but I can see where people start thinking lizard people rule us. Really, like, you start to see the conspiracy nuts on social media that think that, we've been invaded or lizard people or whatever. You see this episode and you can get there. That's all. Speaking of senators, Rand Paul has stepped up. On the Republican side, other than Mitch McConnell, you had, earlier this week, Tommy Tuberville. We were talking about him holding up all these high-ranking appointments at the Defense Department until they took taxpayer funding of abortion services out of the defense bill. Similarly, Rand Paul has now stepped up, and he's putting a hold to all State Department nominees in exchange for COVID documents. I like this. Got some Republicans actually showing some stones for once, flexing a bit, rather than just going about the rubber-stamping gentlemanly business of the Senate. Senator Rand Paul has reached a deal with the State Department to drop his hold on some of the 36 nominees that he's been holding up for the State Department in exchange for documents he hopes will shed light on the origins of COVID-19. Paul has long scrutinized whether the National Institutes of Health funded gain-of-function research on coronaviruses and whether that research could have been used to create a pathogen that leaked from a Wuhan lab. Paul placed a blanket hold on all nominees in early June. I must say, I didn't know that was going on. Good for him. Demanding the State Department turn over documents on the matter. After weeks of negotiations, Rand Paul finally got his way, reached a deal with the agency just as lawmakers flew home for a 5-week recess. Last night, Rand Paul said, "We are releasing our holds on all nominees to the State Department in exchange for information concerning U.S. funding of research in Wuhan, China." All right. I like it. Rand Paul, Tommy Tuberville. By the way, Jason Smith, the Republican chair of the House Ways and Means Committee on the House side. It was him and his committee, I would maintain, that was responsible for blowing up the Hunter Biden plea deal this week. So I want to give credit to some of these Republicans where credit is due. Some of them are flexing and doing their jobs. They're not all linguini spine disasters. 20 years in business. Congratulations to Mike Lindell and MyPillow. 80 million pillows sold over those 20 years. Can you believe that number? Well, Mike and his team at MyPillow, they want to thank each and every one of you for giving them such success over these many years. And now they want to celebrate by giving you the lowest price in MyPillow history. He told me that if you call or log on to MyPillow.com or call them today, you'll get a queen-size MyPillow to celebrate their 20 years in business for just $19.98. 20 years and just about $20 with tax. How about that? $19.98, that's it, for a queen-size MyPillow. Do you know the regular price of this thing is almost $50 more? So you're talking about a $50 discount. By the way, for the king size, you'll get it for just $10 more, $29.98. It's a huge sale. And incidentally, in addition to these pillows that are deeply discounted right now, you go to MyPillow.com and you'll get a discount using my name, Chris Podcast. Use that as your promo code, Chris Podcast. Click on the radio listener square and enter that. And you're talking about mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, sheets, and of course the pillows, so much more. You can try it on. If ever you've gone to MyPillow.com and you've thought to yourself, maybe it's a little expensive, now's the time. Celebrate 20 years with Mike Lindell. And know this, 10-year warranty. 10 years they warranty these things. So if they ever wear out or you have trouble, you can exchange for brand new. 60 days they let you take this stuff home, and if you don't like it, you can send it back for a full refund. So you got nothing to lose but a great night's sleep on MyPillow products. I've colleagues I've sent these my slippers to. They love them. Christine loves hers. The sheets are comfortable. The towels are super absorbent. Even old Dean loves his dog bed. And we drink my coffee here at the office every day. I just brewed some this morning. MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast, all right? With that warranty fully intact, or call 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056, promo code Chris Podcast. Or MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast, if you please to save. Nancy Mace yesterday. Tim Scott held a prayer breakfast. This is an unusual woman. I never know what to make of her. She's, I don't know, how do you read her? Sometimes she can be fantastic. Sometimes she goes full-blown rhino. And sometimes she gets a little salty, like this.
Another year, another standing room only event. And when I woke up this morning at 7, I was getting picked up at 7:45. Patrick, my fiance, tried to pull me by my waist over this morning in bed. And I was like, no, baby, we don't got time for that this morning. I got to get to the prayer breakfast and I got to be on time. And a little TMI, but he can wait. I'll see him later tonight. But I was here early.
What? What the hell? She's at the prayer breakfast, and she's talking about her randy fiance wants some action before she heads out the door. I ain't got time for this. I got to get to the prayer breakfast, honey. You can get yours tonight, she says, as they're gathered for the prayer breakfast. It feels a little... That may not be. I mean, I guess it's a great bit, you know, if you're having cocktails in the evening. But that's the morning prayer breakfast. And now the Reverend Graham. Reverend?
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.